what are your thoughts on like engaging with apolitical Asians?
Yeah. Wow. That I feel like is the question of all organizers is how do we engage people who don't care?
Yeah.
And I feel like and maybe this is not that stellar of an answer, I guess, but consciousness raising, right? Like,
Yeah.
sure, like you could be making like a 6-figure salary, but if you lose your job, 2 paychecks in, are you still going to afford your luxury apartment? Does your boss actually care about you? You're much closer to poverty probably than you are being, another Andrew Yang per se, or insert other like Asian, like rich person here.
Welcome to the Politically Asian podcast. We're just 2 Asian American comedians talking about politics and the Asian American community in hopes of getting more Asians to talk about politics. We're coming at you live from Brooklyn, New York. My name is Aaron Yin. My pronouns are he, him, and you can find me on social media at Aaron Flarin. That's AARON FLARIN. And my co-host,
Hey, my name is Gerrie Lim. My pronouns are they, them, and you can find me across the internet at Gerriaki. That's GERRIEYAKI.
All right. And today we are back with another guest episode. This one's very exciting. If it features someone you know who we first met as a listener, but now they're on the pod. Listeners, please give a warm welcome to Ienna Fernandez.
Woo!
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be on. My name's Ienna. My pronouns are she, they. I'm an organizer with Anakbayan Queens and fellow Asian who loves to talk about politics. And you can find me at Decolonial Bulaklak. That's DECOLONIALBULAKLAK. Thanks for sticking it out for the spelling.
Yeah.
This is actually a spelling podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Well, we're so excited to have you on. You know, we've obviously known each other before the pod, so I'm looking forward to this. So just like, just chilling, talking. I know you just mentioned that you work with Anakbayan Queens. I figured before we ask you all the questions about your background, can you like briefly describe Anakbayan to us in a few sentences?
Yeah, so Anakbayan Queens is a local chapter of Anakbayan USA, and we are a mass organization of youth and students who are fighting for a nationally liberated Philippines. So when we say nationally liberated, we mean just a Philippines that's free from imperialism and also has a socialist perspective. So that is Anakbayan, and we're based, obviously, primarily in Woodside, Queens, because that's where Little Manila is. So,
okay.
That's why we're there.
Got it. Cool.
Okay, cool. I know Anakbayan has like also a Manhattan branch, and I think I like, why is that again? Like, why are there 2 branches, and also where's Brooklyn?
Yeah, good question. So a little bit of history. So like pre-2020, it was actually Anakbayan, New York broadly. When it was smaller. So as like more members joined, it split into Manhattan and Queens. So Queens has like a particular demographic of like working class youth and students. And Anakbayan Manhattan, as we know, and Manhattan has so many schools. So a lot of like Filipino students specifically in like like undergraduate institutions, and also of course there are like workers there as well. So it kind of split just as like where are the Filipino youth? They're here. Not to say there are also some in Brooklyn, but I think just strategically where it was like Queens, Manhattan, let's go.
That's really funny. I had no idea. Hopefully over time the Filipino population in Brooklyn will also go up, but
well, I mean the Asian population went up according to the census, right?
Yeah,
like we've covered that before.
Say, yeah.
So
yeah, I guess it was mainly like Chinese people. I know like there's like Sunset Park, right? And then maybe like Indian people, I guess depending on what areas of Brooklyn, but okay, I see. Cool. So I know you said like overall Anakbayan is focused on you said like globally liberated Philippines. I guess, can you talk a little bit more about some things that maybe the Queens chapter has done recently, or the Manhattan chapter, or like however you want to talk about it?
Sure. Yeah. So I think a lot of our focus over the past few months has been around like drawing like attention to just the 4 new military bases that are being built in the Philippines. So during
Yep.
April, yeah. So during this past month, we've been holding like a national month of like resistance against like U.S. imperialism, U.S. military out of the Philippines. So we had a Times Square action that happened, and that was joint between Anakbayan Queens, Manhattan, and other related organizations, either like in the National Democratic Movement or just solidarity organizations as well. So that's been our focus for now, is just how do we let other Filipinos know that this is what's happening across like young people, and also just building out solidarity amongst just people who care about politics.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. Nice.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting, because I know Aaron and I covered those whatchamacallit, those military bases a couple months ago, I think, when they announced it. I remember seeing it like in the New York Times. I was like, whoa, wow.
Yeah. Was this at the same time when like Marcos Jr. was coming to New York?
That was in September. So September was
okay.
That was a while ago.
a while ago. But sometimes, I mean, time, what is time
What
now?
is time? Yeah.
And I think just they're all like melding together, because Kamala Harris went to visit the Philippines in January.
Sure.
So a lot of these things are just happening back to back.
Yeah, that's interesting. When I think about Anakbayan and just being Filipino, because for people who are listening and somehow don't know, I'm Filipino. And I think a lot about like my own parents, and just they're pretty conservative. They're resistant to change, and whenever I'm like, oh, well, it would be great if the Philippines did XYZ. They're always like, oh, well, what would you know about the Philippines? Like, why, you didn't even live there. You didn't grow up there. Like, and so I guess like one question that I have for you is just like, how do you see like the intersection of Filipino identity and like leftist politics and all that stuff? The closest I've ever gotten is just being like, oh, at the Kamayan, everyone eats. Share.
That's a great question. And I think that that's a big part of why I actually got to be part of Anakbayan, is just wanting to connect to being Filipino, but also just having like socialist politics. So for folks who don't know, Anakbayan is actually like very rooted in a lot of the anti-Marcos struggles back in like the 1980s. There's an organization called Bayan that we're actually part of, Anakbayan, if you follow my lead. So they're rooted very much in what working class struggle has really looked like, whether it's like ousting a dictator, or like, hey, why is it that farmers don't have land or money as they like work? It's unfair. So it was really special to me to be part of Anakbayan, because I feel connected to what organizers are doing in the Philippines. Like, we'll have educational discussions where organizers on the ground in Manila or various parts of the Philippines are literally talking to us about like what they see. So I feel like a lot of people might think of like leftist politics as like a Western import, but it's not. Like, people out there have been like really doing this since the 60s. So it feels really cool to like be part of that, even being in the US.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, like, I feel like I'm about to get flamed for this, because I don't know how to quote it like word for word, and I don't think I'm not sure the fact is 100% correct, but like if I remember correctly, like the ousting of the dictator the first go round, which Marcos, was like done by like leftist people, was it not? Wasn't it?
Yeah, no, you're right. I think like I will say that even just seeing like the people power movement, which is like what ousted dictator Marcos, the first one, because we have the second one back in the Philippines.
The remix, yeah.
I know, Marcos remix, sadly, was really comprehensive in terms of like even having like church people or even, I guess, like liberal Filipinos, not necessarily leftists, were part of that. And it was actually led in part by Bayan USA, or not Bayan USA, Bayan Philippines, was like rooted in like learning how to agitate people across the political spectrum around. We at least can agree that this dictator sucks and is harming us. So what's up with that? So I feel like leftist politics is what helped kind of create people power. So you're right. Nice. You got it.
Yeah. Yes, I earned my card today. I earned the right to keep it, I guess. So like whenever you go to like a family gathering or whatever, and do you ever like push back on like the conservative titas or titos? I know maybe that's not like the best place to do it when we're like, let's just eat the lechon and like not let's talk about Christmas plans, right? How do you like navigate even just landing on the same page? Because you mentioned like that idea, okay, we agree that this dictator sucks and he's hurting us. It doesn't matter if we agree on like, whether gay people should have rights, but we agree we hate this guy. And I guess like, how do you navigate telling a conservative tita or tito and like getting on the same page with them?
So I will note that I haven't been the best at that. Okay. I think just like, I think it's real sometimes where, you're like, I am seeing my family like rarely. And I also will say that my mom and most of the titas and titos that I actually interact with already hate Marcos and generally seem like on, I guess, more left than maybe most Filipino parents are. My mom and I regularly talk about like Marcos sucks. Like the Philippines is poor, but the land is rich. Like my mom literally has been able to say that. I know. I'm like, Mom, were you organized and you weren't telling me about it? So I feel like that's also why I don't have practice around that because I'm lucky that my mom and my family members that I mostly see in the U.S. who are here, like share pretty similar politics.
I will say it doesn't matter if because like my parents, like I mentioned earlier, are conservative, but they're also against Marcos. But I think it's just because they have that like lived trauma of like being under the first Marcos. Okay, so what about like cousins? You got the conservative cousins.
Yeah, I feel like I'm not giving you a good answer.
Okay, it doesn't have to be cousins. You know what I mean? Not like cousins, but like cousins.
Sure. Maybe I'm just in a wildly different family, but most folks that I've interacted with in my family are like, even though I'm not saying socialism, they're like, everybody should have universal health care and people shouldn't be poor. And I'm like, cool, that's great. That's awesome.
Yeah. It seems like, I guess from the outside, just like, listening to Gerrie talk about their family, it seems like maybe one potential rift with like our generation, old ones, could be specifically around military bases. I would say, like, have you had a lot of fights before about that topic specifically? Like, have you had any success in being like, these bases bad because of X, Y, Z?
That's a good question. I feel like a lot of people will think that, the military bases are here to protect us or they provide jobs. Like my Lolo, right. My Lolo actually worked at a military base and even and I think Filipinos who might live around the bases, the violence that actually comes from those bases isn't exactly apparent. Like military officers aren't just going around actively killing individual people.
Yeah. They're doing it a little further away, but continue what you're saying.
Yeah. So I guess like in conversations that I've had with, whether it's my own family or just elder Filipinos, is explaining I think sometimes talking about money can be helpful. where it's like, oh, like this, there's so much money that the US putting into the military bases, but what if it went to providing health resources or PPE? Like, what if that money went to helping poor people in the Philippines? So sometimes redirecting in that way and just encouraging people to think about, if we could use that money for something else, this would be significantly better. And I think that's actually been really helpful.
That's a very like common thing we keep coming back to. It's like using econ terms and like opportunity cost of this versus that. That's I agree with that. That's like the Gerrie and I talk about how maybe like our parents really care about how money is spent and account from an accountability perspective. That's actually pretty solid. Like or like it's a theme that we keep coming back to.
Yeah, I think too, everyone has a vested interest in wanting to have enough money to live. So it's such a simple way to like think about like, oh, the common experience is that we have bills and we're forced to work. So if I'm able to say, hey, can you imagine if you had more money for XYZ? It's a pretty good way of getting people to see your side.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, so far, we've talked specifically about like you and Anakbayan, and I think right now might be a good moment to kind of zoom out a little bit. I'm kind of curious, like, what helped, shape your politics and sort of, radicalize you? Like, we talk about maybe having like a Ratatouille moment, like some moment in the past really just like changed everything, Did you have that? Like, what kind of led you to where you are right now in like a short story form timeline?
Wow, short story form timeline. It's hard to even just think about one specific moment, but I think being an immigrant myself and growing up poor and law school, really, the combination of the two kind of led me there. I think just as a young person who didn't have much, I was questioning like, why don't I have much? Why do other people have that? Do I not deserve that? And then just going through the immigration process myself is what led me to law school and learning about that, and just the immigration system itself being really harmful, even if you can win your case, as was my case. Just kind of really radicalized me to see that there are deeper issues that can't just be solved with just being a lawyer and require really radical, like revolutionary organizing.
Oh, that was a good summary.
Yeah.
Wait, so I know we were talking earlier, like you immigrated from the Philippines. What age did you come to the US?
I was 6 years old. So 1999, baby.
I know.
So you were like conscious.
Yeah.
I was conscious though. I actually lived in Hong Kong for 6 years.
Whoa, okay.
I was born in the Philippines. Born in the Philippines, spent a month in Hong Kong, or six years in Hong Kong. So sadly, my memories before I was 6 kind of non-existent. So it's almost as if like I have just been really raised in the US.
Oh, interesting. Okay. And then I know you mentioned, law school, and then, feeling like the law wasn't really going to like change things. And I guess I'm kind of curious, like within law school, was there like a particular moment that made you think that? Because like when I meet people who go to law school, they're always saying the opposite, like, oh, law will change things for many, many people. It's like a lasting impact that can affect lives, and that's why I want to be a lawyer, da-da-da-da-da.
And then they go into corporate law.
Yeah. then they go into corporate law, and they're like, Jeff Bezos is a good man,
Oh, no. So the law school I went to allegedly is a more left-leaning law school.
Okay.
So I want to say that actually most people that I went to law school with ended up being like, the law sucks. And I guess, it's important to remember too, right, that who wrote these laws, who created this government we have, and it's white, propertied, rich, like men.
Yeah.
not even white women. They weren't even there yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when we think about like how the US came to be, stealing land from indigenous peoples, and that all of the rules that govern this current system that we have are built by people who didn't even want Asian people to really be here, kind of settled in for me as I like looked through how court cases are decided. The proper way to argue a case still requires you to like use these terrible laws and kind of forget that like when you have a case, you're dealing with someone's very real life, whether it's this is a poor Black person or this is a trans person. You're trying to fit them into these like very like weird cases that don't actually take them into account. So I could always expand on that, but I think just generally it's hard to use the master's tools
yes,
to dismantle it. Quoting Audre Lorde.
That's exactly what I was thinking about at the time. Yeah. That makes sense. Wow. Okay. Okay. So
yeah, that's really fair.
Yeah. And so kind of understanding this, so in the life story of Ienna, you have that realization in law school, so you don't become a lawyer. And at that point, you move to New York and you find Anakbayan, Queens?
Yeah. So
okay.
A good friend of mine who had already been in New York and was actually taking like a Filipino language class, was organized that way. And my friend, obviously also Filipino, was like, hey, I know your politics. I think you'd like to join this place. And I was like, you are right. And that's how I got to Anakbayan.
Nice.
Okay. So, kind of moving on to speaking like generally about Asian Americans' politics and their stances, what are your thoughts on like how we engage with Asian Americans who identify as like apolitical, like the people who don't want to do any kind of politics whatsoever?
These are like the people who they might have really nice jobs already, like in my mind, when I think apolitical Asian, it's like you're making 6 figures, you might be in tech or some other really good industry, you have a really nice apartment, maybe Upper East Side, maybe Bushwick, something really nice.
Or
and
not
you're just
even.
Like, yeah.
Not even. They don't even have to be making that 6-figure salary. It's just like they've never thought to question,
they just, like don't care.
kind of like what you said, right? Like they've never thought to question, like, why don't I have more? Oh, it's probably because I don't work hard enough, or like something like that.
It's just like brain is, it's not
head
even
empty.
I was gonna say head empty. Maybe that's the best way to put it. It's like there's really like I think about when I try to give Asian people flyers sometimes, and they're just like, no. It's like that kind of person in my head too. But I guess like, what are your thoughts on like engaging with apolitical Asians?
Yeah. Wow. That I feel like is the question of all organizers is how do we engage people who don't care?
Yeah.
And I feel like and maybe this is not that stellar of an answer, I guess, but consciousness raising, right? Like, sure, like you could be making like a 6-figure salary, but if you lose your job 2 paychecks in, are you still going to afford your luxury apartment? Does your boss actually care about you? You're much closer to poverty probably than you are being, another Andrew Yang per se, or insert other like Asian like rich person here.
Yeah.
So I feel like I think it's a real problem that a lot of people, once they reach a certain salary or even just get the job that they think is their dream job, are like, well, I have what I need now. I'm not a worker like I don't make I'm not low wage anymore. So what do I have to complain about? I have it already. When I think people like really need to realize like there's not actually a guarantee that you're always going to have that job. We saw all the layoffs from the tech industry. Like, So, and that sucks too, because I imagine there's a lot of workers also who might like have a good salary for a moment, but they might have grown up poor. They don't have like parents to like rely on for rent money. So kind of reminding people by way of even popular education around like, hey, like, let's talk about like, what do you actually have? And what is going to be there forever? Because I don't think we're actually as protected as we think we are.
Hey everyone, if you're still listening to the podcast right now, thank you so much for making it this far. Here to just say, if you like us, please consider pausing the episode right now and give us a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. Those reviews really, really help us out with the algorithm that, does not really like us overall. If you want to support us financially, you can also do so by going to buymeacoffee.com/politicalasian. If you donate, we'll also give you a shout out as well. Just a one-time payment of whatever you want. And yeah, that's it. All right. Thanks for listening, and back to the episode.
Yeah, I don't know about y'all, but like when on like dating apps, you can like put your politics now. And like I would rather people say like they're conservative or something than say like apolitical, which is an option on Hinge. And I think you hit the nail. I think you hit the nail on the head there. Because when you're talking about like with a worker who thinks like, oh, well, I've made it. Like I'm no longer working that job. And I think like that's what makes me upset. It's because even if you have it good, which, like you pointed out, how far away are you actually from poverty? But it's also like you're not thinking about anyone else, and it's just like that like individualism that makes me like really, really angry. Like obviously, like, we're unique individuals, but like, care about someone else,
Yeah, like I agree. Obviously, I agree. I think especially when we think about if you are thinking about other people and you're like raising the wage floor for people who have the same job as you, that also actually benefits you in the long run. That means you're going to get paid more or you're going to have better benefits. It's wild, I think, just especially like individualism in the US, like Asian diaspora, where I feel like I also see like more communal perspectives or like an obligation or like a duty to be like, I care about people around me in other like spaces. So it's just it's wild to kind of observe that, especially in the US as diaspora.
Yeah. I think especially what you were saying earlier with the tech layoffs, I do feel like that was a major like awakening moment, because even like me, I'm like, tech is like the thing that everyone has heard good things about, right? Oh, the good salaries, the ping pong tables, the free snacks, the whatever insurance, right? It's like so good. It's like the pedestal, but to have that crumbling, I think is a really good sign that like, yeah, even you are closer to, being, poor than being permanently successful and rich.
Right. And I even think about anti-Asian violence also, I imagine, has brought a lot of people who maybe were apolitical before to kind of see like, you can have the job, you can have a certain lifestyle that is assimilated to whiteness or some kind of protection, but people still hate us.
Yeah.
So it's, I feel like it's fascinating kind of observing like apolitical Asians and also witnessing like very real issues happening in real time, and kind of being, I guess, like that's the job of an organizer too, is just to be like, let's get you there. Look at it. It's right here. Let's zoom in, y'all. Let's look at it.
Yeah, it's the computer enhance. Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely the most jarring thing. It's like when you have like people, like in New York City, when we hear about so many attacks, and even at this point, it's like there are still, like I know people who are like, yeah, that sucks. That's so bad to hear about, and then that's it. And it's like, okay, well, clearly even that wasn't enough. Yeah, that wasn't enough to like activate something in you. Like I feel like at this point, I'm like, something surely has to work, but maybe not yet for a certain group.
Yeah, I always think about, amongst organizers, we know that this is a marathon. It is not a sprint. We're in it for the long run. We're probably not going to see it in our lifetime, but I always kind of try to think about even like 100 years ago, like there have been some like radical changes made. So it's like maybe we're not seeing it in our lifetimes, but if we push more, like I trust and do believe that people will get there, especially as we literally are seeing structures crumble before our very eyes.
Yeah. That's a really optimistic way to look at it, and I appreciate that, because like I think for me, and like Aaron, I don't know if you feel the same, but sometimes I feel like as a community, Asian Americans are like, we're really hardwiring ourselves for short-sightedness, like our ability to see like progress or like our goals are like Oscar award season, like that's as far as we're gonna look, you know. Yeah, I like the just like constant encouragement of like you got to look beyond.
Yeah, and I feel like I understand why we have to find joy in something, whether it's the Oscars to even just like bolster our joy. But I mean, I think about as a politics nerd, when I think about all of the revolutions that I've studied in history, it's like those are like reminders of like they did that. Holy shit. So they could do it. We could do it again. So
dude, that's like such the hardest part too, because like Gerrie and I always complain about how, you know, the Asian American label is barely used for politics today, even though it was made like as a really strong label. But now it's like, you know, like hell, you know, I'm drinking bubble tea right now. People call this this Asian American drink right here, this Asian American food right here. So like I don't know. It's like we can do it again, but it seems like somehow we took a step forward with that label. But then we maybe took 2 steps back by, you know, misusing the label so much to where it's like a totally different thing now.
Yeah, that's real. History really changes things. And I think just the powers that become really good at taking like very political terms to just to remove that history. So sometimes it's a reminder of like, oh, they know what they're doing. Sadly, but our movements are stronger than just a term, you know, like
I mean, we'll especially see that now that, you know, the month of May is coming up, you know, Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander month. We're gonna see a lot of misusing of that label pretty soon.
Yay.
Yay. Yeah.
I mean, okay, I guess like trying to think optimistically, I guess like what advice do you have for like Asian Americans who are interested in getting involved in organizing or like even like socialist activism? I feel like maybe you don't even have to speak to the socialist aspect of it, because I know that can scare some people or whatever, but just like like participating more, organizing, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I will say for myself that when you find a really good organization with organizers who are really invested in like what that world we want looks like, it's finding people who you can rely on, to whether it's like developing your own political consciousness and even just learning how to like talk to your neighbors and talk to like fellow like workers around like, hey, like what's going on? I think really good organizations know how to build like really good interpersonal relationships too.
Yep.
So I feel like I encourage people all the time that, you know, if you have an organization in mind, go to like one meeting, ask to meet with an organizer and see like how they respond to you. And there are lots of organizations that I think do that. Anakbayan, Youth Against Displacement. I feel like I've talked to folks from Youth Against Sweatshops, and they were really engaging. That made me feel like, oh, you're invested in like getting to know me as a person. And building that and just seeing also like the victories that happened from like, you know, the No More 24 rally, seeing like that sit-in was amazing. That it is a lot of work, and it's the long game, but the small victories that happen in between, whether it's I found a new comrade or this sit-in had 700, 800 people show up is really cool. And I think even like, obviously just speaking for myself, but I know other, my comrades also feel the same way. These moments remind me like, this is worth it. Like this is worth fighting for. And the more that we build, the more that we have more people come through, the more that our victories will come and also get bigger. So I know that's quite an optimistic take, but I think
that's very optimistic. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's okay. No, that's good.
Yeah. I've been part of Anakbayan for almost 3 years now, since 2020. 2019 was when I first started attending Anakbayan events, and then I became a full member in 2020.
Oh, nice.
Over that time, like, of course there are struggles, but each like protest rally, educational discussion meeting, I'm like reminded that this is really cool and to be part of, even historically.
Yeah. That's really nice. I kind of wish I asked this. I mean, I do have a question. I kind of wish I asked it before this question, but I'll still ask it. Obviously, like, we both organize in like our respective groups, and like there are always frustrating things you wish were different. I guess one question I have for you is like, what's something that maybe frustrates you about organizing, maybe something within organizing that makes you kind of like roll your eyes a little bit, just to kind of paint like a more holistic picture of the ups and the downs?
Ooh, that's a spicy question, but it's a good one, and it needs to be struggled out.
Yeah.
Frustrations. I think like communication sometimes, right? Like, organizing is based, it's as strong as your communication and trust with each other. And different members have like different capacities, different ways to engage or get involved. And sometimes that's not clear. So I think something that is always really important is to like kind of even just define like ahead of time, like, so what do we actually expect from new members, right? Like, how do we make it? I'm constantly thinking about what can we do to make organizing as easy as possible for a new member? Like whether that's, do you know how many hours a week? Or like, if you say you only have 2 hours a week, then I know I can be like, you can do this one task. Can you reach out to one person today?
Oh, yeah.
So I think, because I know like I've been in different groups. I've been part of DSA too. Yeah. So lots to say about DSA, but we love building a united front. It just, like, how do we like really stay in contact with our members and make it so that it's like, it's worth being here, y'all, even when because it's hard work, and I get why people drop off or like maybe don't know how to communicate, but it's up to folks who have been in the movement for a long time to really just like think like, how can we keep people here? How can we meet their needs as the bigger question of organizing?
That's good. No, I agree with that. Yeah, go for it.
Should we? I mean, I'd love to hear more about your experience with DSA, and I will happily, I can happily go first to like, what's it called? I'll happily go first if you'd like, just to the extent of how far we can name names. But from my experience when I did DSA, I chose like one issue and I started like way back. So I did like the DSA 101, which is like they're meeting in like the Lower East Side. They have like a new space now. There were so many people, like they had free food. It was packed. It was out the door. I saw, I'm not going to say who, but like I did see like a TV comedy writer there. And it was just like everyone and their mama was there. And then they started talking about like how DSA is like branched geographically. So I went to my neighborhood DSA, at least like on Zoom. And I think it was like roughly half the people. And then I chose an interest group, which is like how they, do their topics or whatever, like what you're passionate about, what you want to work on. And I did healthcare working group, right? So I think that was like a quarter of the people that had showed up before. And then beyond that, they have like a task force for each interest group. And I think that was like actually doing stuff, which like you know, based on like what Aaron talks about, is like very much like, you know, hands-on, like calling people, flyering, like all that stuff. Like, I think it was like me and like 3 white dudes. And that was like for healthcare, you know, like healthcare for all that kind of thing. Very not good, very unpleasant, and just generally bad vibes. So yeah, that was my experience with DSA. I'm sure there's some great experiences, but 'twas not mine. Love to hear about yours.
Oh man, I am so sorry, because at least my experience was not that bad, but I'm not surprised. I will say that. I was part of DSA maybe for a year and a half, and I was part of a working group that I actually liked, the Immigrant Justice Working Group, which
that makes
was
sense.
Yeah, of course. Why? I wonder why.
Yeah.
But I think my thing, and also related to just the kind of organizing work I like to do, or my lane, I guess, for the sake of political toolboxes.
Yeah.
It always came back to electoral like politics, even for the working group, where I was like, I, you know, wanted to be part of this working group in hopes to connect more deeply, you know, with like certain like immigration focused issues, which they did. But I think sometimes like even just, wow, really naming names, just hearing from like the upper organs of DSA, like just requests or tasks and asks around like, this election's coming up, door knocking, flyering for this candidate. I was like, this is simply not where I want to be.
Like very, very vote focused, right? Very like voting people. Yeah, like when I haven't been in DSA, but like some people in Youth Against Displacement were before, and it really feels like, you know, like in high school you had like student government and student council and like class president. It feels kind of like that, but just for like local politics. You know, everyone's always trying to just like be like the popular kid in school who wants to be elected.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good analogy, actually. I'm like, why does this feel so familiar? And yet, what is going on?
And yet we're grown up.
And yet we're grown up.
Yeah, because like I feel like DSA would never do like, you know, a protest at Times Square against, you know, military bases, right? It just because there's no elected official involved. There's no specific bill to vote on involved for this. It's more like an outside of electoral things action. So,
but like, sorry, I was just gonna say, like, even within electoral politics, though, right? Like, there was the railroad worker strike, and I think if I remember correctly, AOC voted against like the workers striking or something, like basically didn't support them. And then I remember seeing in like New York City DSA comments, people were like, who is gonna hold AOC accountable? Like she didn't support the worker, blah 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 blah. Nothing. I don't even think DSA put out a statement or anything. Anyway,
I was literally just about to bring up AOC for that specific example of just like, and I will say like, I was on the AOC train a couple years ago when she was first starting out, but like, who's actually holding her accountable? And also like, you're literally voting anti-worker, and also had brought like at a speaking engagement recently, like had brought like military recruitment. So I'm like, girl, where are you? What are you doing?
Yeah, she's very anti-train in general now.
Anti-train worker, pro-military. I don't know, girl. So oh, so much to say.
It is kind of frustrating. Like it's not the first time this has happened. There was also Julia Salazar with like kind of like privatizing like NYCHA housing, you know, public housing, like bring it like that type of thing, and there was no call out. But yeah, it's so frustrating when it's like you're so focused on electoral politics, and then when the elected people you have do bad stuff, you also don't want to call them out. On top of the whole electoral politics not, you know, being the only way to do things, but yet you still have an obsession for it. Yeah.
Right. You know what I will say, to give DSA a little bit of their roses, we have had a specific chapter. I know. Wow, I didn't even think of that joke, but we'll say it is now. DS, like the international, like there's an anti-war committee for DSA. I will say they have shown up to buy in stuff.
Oh, nice.
So that has felt like really good to see. Like there are, and also because even just acknowledging it's huge. It's like a big tent organization.
Yeah,
as they like to describe. So
DSA is
DSA is like a big tent organization, right?
10,000 members.
Oh no, it's like 90, I think.
Oh, 90,000 members.
90,000 card carrying members.
Yeah.
Bro, what is this? The NRA? Like, that's the only time I've heard card carrying member used before. Other than that,
I forgot I had like I got my little DSA card in the mail and had my little name on it, and the little rose.
Yeah, mine's like in my paperwork somewhere over there.
A card carrying member. That is truly some NRA speak right there. Yeah. I think dunking on DSA is a great way to end this episode. If you enjoyed this, the best way to support us is to give us a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. Obviously, you can find us on social media. Just search Politically Asian Podcast. But yeah, if you feel like donating something financially, you can always find us on buymeacoffee.com/politicalasian. But that's the episode. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.